In Argentina, Patagonian provinces renew their governments as the ruling party wins Rio Negro province. Also in Russia, President Vladimir Putin met with Chinese Defense Minister Li Shanfu on the first day of the high official's three-day visit to the nation. And the death toll in Sudan from the clashes between the army and the rebel rapid support forces, the RSF, rose to 97, while wounded exceeded 1,100. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Argentina experienced an electoral weekend. The Patagonian provinces renewed their governments, and Rio Negro, Juntos Somos Rio Negro, announced the triumph. The national senator and candidate for the provincial ruling party, Juntos Somos Rio Negro, Together We Are Rio Negro, won the elections for the governor post. Following second was Aníbal Tortoriello, the candidate for Juntos por el Cambio. The national senator and candidate for Rio Negro, Alberto Wertelneck, was proclaimed this Sunday night as the new governor of the province with a wide advantage. In Cuba, citizens commemorate the 62nd anniversary of the proclamation of the socialist nature of the revolution that sealed the ideological course of the process of transformations that the island promotes since January 1st, 1959. The historic corner of 23rd and the 12th Avenue streets in Havana's Virado district once again is a place to recall the glorious days of that April when Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro spoke in front of thousands of workers and farmers gathered at the central corner and proclaimed the socialist character of the revolution. This took place during the funeral honors for the victims of the cruel bombing carried out by the U.S. airplanes against the air bases of Ciudad Libertad, San Antonio de los Baños, and Santiago de Cuba. Washington's objective was to sow terror and confusion, to neutralize the air defense capabilities, and to facilitate the landing of the mercenary troops in order to cause a fracture in the Cuban Revolution. Haiti's social organizations denounce that all churches in the country are closed under the pressure from criminal gangs. The director of Vision for Haiti Foundation, Maxo Yosef, said that the country's churches have not been able to comply with Easter's schedule due to criminal gangs demanding payments to allow churches to fulfill their activities. Yosef also said that religious kidnapping is also a frequent practice used by gangs to raise the funds. Ransom payments are estimated at between $50,000 and $100,000. The foundation calls for help from international community, but based on respect for human rights. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega, at the International Development Cooperation meeting with China, highlighted his government's efforts in the fight against poverty. The Nicaraguan head of state emphasized that his government maintains a permanent fight against poverty, despite failed attempts from the U.S. government to carry out a coup in the Central American nation. He also indicated his administration is committed to peace, work, development, and to improve the economy, which is why they continue to join forces and create cooperation alliances with other countries in order to fulfill his commitment. President Ortega concluded by saying that Nicaragua is in a growing process while improving the quality of life for all Nicaraguan families. And the Colombian mothers commemorate 15th years of struggle against impunity over false positives in Soacha municipality. On Sunday, social movements gathered in the main park of Soacha. During the event, cultural activities took place aimed at raising awareness of the struggles of the mothers of false positives, as well as reminding the nation that these events can never happen again. In 2008, 19 young men from the municipality of Soacha and the south of Bogotá disappeared. The young men were later found murdered in the department of Norte de Santander and presented by the National Army as guerrilla fighters killed in action. In this context, social organizations affirmed that more than 6,000 people have been recorded as false positives in Colombia. The National Movement of Friendship and Mutual Solidarity Cuba-Venezuela commemorated 20 years of the social program Barrio Adentro, a historic achievement and humanity and brotherhood. The strategic vision of commanders Fidel Castro Ruz and Hugo Chavez Frias made possible 20 years ago the creation of the Barrio Adentro as a humanitarian and solidarity-based social project. This initiative began with medical clinics in the communities to provide free preventive care to patients. In spite of the economic conditions of the country in recent years due to the blockade and coercive measures imposed by the United States, the Ministry of Economy, Finance and Foreign Trade indicated that the state is making efforts and investments to bring this public policy to all communities and to guarantee the universal right to health and medical care. On Sunday, the Brazilian Agency for International Tourism Promotion announced that the number of foreign tourists in Brazil will increase by an estimated 2.1 million in 2023. For such forecast, they expect about 9.7 million passengers between April and December, an increase of 26% compared to the same time in 2022. The figures are contained in a report prepared with data from ForwardSkis, one of the world's leading travel analytics providers. Between January and February, foreign tourists left in the country $1.1 billion, surpassing the digit of the first 2 months of 2020. The announcement also stated that the presidency of the Brazilian Agency for International Tourism Promotion has been in talks with at least 32 foreign airlines to include new Brazilian routes in their destinations. Now we move on to other topics. Mexican authorities remained on high alert after Popocatépetl volcano started spewing hot ash and rock close to its capital city. The country's National Center for Disaster Prevention, along with local authorities, continued working together to find possible evacuation routes for the population near Mexico City. The center is also issued a level 3 yellow alert, indicating possible magma expulsion and explosions of increasing intensity. The alert, the third highest, is one level below a red alert that will trigger preparations for an evacuation. The Popocatépetl volcano has been particularly active in recent months and has recently been spewing hot rock, ash and gas. Let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Saturday, in the United States, 2 people were killed in a shooting in a park in Louisville, less than a week after a similar incident at a bank in the city of the state of Kentucky. The incident occurred last night in the city's Chickasaw Park, and the police reports indicated that it also left about 4 people wounded. Paul Humphrey, Louisville's deputy police chief, stated at a press conference that although there were hundreds of people in the park at the time of the attack, the police had no witnesses to the shooting and that they are looking for the alleged perpetrator. Meanwhile, the city's mayor, Craig Greenberg, lamented that there was a new incident of gun violence in the city. The online tracker Gun Violence Archive published that until April 15th, 157 of these incidents were recorded nationwide, and a day later the number increased to 163.
Remain anonymous by EMS, University of Louisville Hospital.
And elsewhere, also in the U.S. southeastern region on Saturday, 4 people were killed and several injured in a shooting in the state of Alabama. Police reports indicated that the victims had been celebrating a teenage birthday party. The shooting occurred in a location of Dadeville, a small town northeast of Montgomery, the state capital, and at least 20 people were shot and wounded, mostly teenagers. Alabama law enforcement agency did not mention whether a suspect had been arrested or identified. The United States, a country of around 330 million people, is awash with some 400 million guns, and deadly mass shootings are regular occurrence. On Sunday, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with his Chinese Defense Minister Li Shanfu on the first day of his high official's three-day visit to Russia. The Chinese Defense Minister arrived in Moscow following President Xi Jinping's previous visit, during which he and the Russian President Vladimir Putin presented a united front against the Western Bloc's hegemonic policy. During his trip, Shanfu is scheduled to hold talks with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Shoigu, to discuss the status and prospects of bilateral cooperation in the defense sector, as well as issues of global and regional security. Li's visit seeks to strengthen the relationship with Russia and also to reinforce the new world order.
We conduct joint drills on different theaters in the Far Eastern region, in Europe, at sea, on land, and in the air. I think that this is undoubtedly another track of utmost importance that strengthens an exclusively strategic trust relationship between Russia and China. Ties are improving very well on all tracks in the economy, in the social, education, and culture areas, and we are working equally actively on the level of the defense ministries. We regularly share useful information. We cooperate in the field of military and technical collaboration.
Now we move on to other topics. Russian and Ukrainian authorities moved forward on prisoner exchange. This comes on the occasion of the Orthodox Easter. In the latest prisoner swap, more than 150 Ukrainian soldiers returned home as part of the agreement between both governments. In this sense, the Orthodox Church welcomed the release of Ukrainian prisoners by the Russian army amid celebrations of Resurrection Sunday. At the same time, Ukrainian authorities announced a major exchange of prisoners, but did not specify the amount of Russian soldiers that have returned to their territory. In this context, Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Orthodox believers and highlighted the hope of Easter, which inspires good thoughts and actions. On Sunday, in the Czech Republic, thousands of demonstrators gathered in Prague's central Wenceslas Square to protest against the center-right Czech government. During the mobilization, protesters blamed the government of Prime Minister Petr Fiala for rising energy prices, high inflation reaching 15% in March, and criticized its support for Ukraine. Czechs have denounced that Fiala's administration ignores their economic woes. The Czech Republic, which currently holds the rotating European Union presidency, has taken in over 400,000 refugees from Ukraine and has provided significant military and humanitarian aid to that country.
We are here today because we want to express our disapproval of this government, of the political situation, of what's going on in the Czech Republic, and in fact in the whole of Europe. This government is full of warmongers who want war at all costs. They have introduced censorship. You almost can't say what you want and what you think. People are afraid.
And the Syrian authorities reported on Sunday that the United States military units continue to loot oil from Hasakeh province. The report indicates that a caravan of 44 tanker trucks loaded with crude oil left the oil mines in the city of Al-Jarubia to enter Iraq through the illegal passage of Al-Mahmoudiya. The group of vehicles was protected like all those that live by a group of the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, whose main sponsor is the United States. This looting adds to a series of catastrophes through which the eastern country is going through, ranging from an earthquake and illegal occupation by Washington and the shortage of oil products by the same. Since the U.S. occupation, Syria has reduced its level of fuel production. In turn, the Foreign Ministry reported that this looting is a millionaire loss for the national treasury. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The death toll in Sudan from clashes between the army and the Rebel Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, a group rose to 97, while the wounded exceeded 1,100. According to the Sudan Doctors Union, the death toll does not include all the victims because many of the victims could not reach the hospitals due to the difficulties of displacement. For its part, the World Health Organization counted more than 80 deaths and 1,126 people injured by the clashes in the African country since April 13th. The WHO reported most of the deaths and injuries in the capital Khartoum and the localities of South Kordofan, North Darfur, North State, and other regions. Given the intensity of the fighting, the WHO called on the army and the rebel forces to commit to respecting the neutrality of the medical care and to ensure access to hospitals and medical centers. The army said Sunday that the situation in much of the country is under control, adding that fighting has been only reported in the capital. Meanwhile, the African Union said to be following developments in the Republic of Sudan very closely and with deep concern. In a statement, the president of the Commission of the African Union, Musa Faki Mohammed, called for an urgent ceasefire while regretting how things have gone dangerously out of control, and resort to armed violence has prevailed as a way of resolving political disputes. Mohammed further appealed to all parties, armed forces and the rapid support forces, in particular to immediately cease the destruction of the country and the bloodbaths of innocent people. On Sunday, Arab League members in Egypt held an emergency meeting to discuss the ongoing armed conflict in Sudan at the request of Egypt and Saudi Arabia. During the meeting, the Egyptian representative to the Pan-Arab Organization, Mohammed Mustafa Orfi, called on the parties to immediately cease the clashes. He also reaffirmed Cairo's commitment to support the stability and security of the neighboring nation, with which it shares more than 1,270 kilometers of border. Hussam Zaki, the Undersecretary General of the Arab League, made a similar statement, calling for an end to the clashes. Meanwhile, the Sudanese ambassador Sadiq Omar Abdallah accused the rapid support forces of starting the conflict by attacking on Saturday the armed forces command and other military and civilian installations. On the other hand, the Chinese government also called for an end to hostilities between the Sudanese Army and the so-called Rapid Support Forces, which have left some 70 dead and over 500 wounded. In a statement, Beijing's foreign ministry assured to be closely following the situation and advocates for the parties to abandon the clashes as soon as possible and avoid a further increase in tensions. The Chinese foreign ministry also expressed its hope that there will be the possibility for dialogue and that Sudan will be able to move along a political transition process. And from the Vatican City, the Pope Francis expressed his concern for the situation in Sudan in light of the clashes.
I'm following with concern the events taking place in Sudan. I'm close to the Sudanese people who have already suffered so much, and I invite them to pray that the weapons will be abandoned and that dialogue will prevail in order to resume the path of peace and harmony together. Certain of interpreting the sentiments of the faithful throughout the world, I address a grateful thought to the memory of Saint John Paul II in this day, the subject of offensive and unfounded inferences.
During a news conference in Abu Dhabi, the former Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok called for dialogue amid deadly violence between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces.
This war must come to an end because it is a war where the winner is the loser. Peace remains the only available option for the Sudanese people to avoid slipping into a civil war. We must work onward to create a trust that allows for safe corridors, enabling citizens to fulfill their needs for medicine, treatment, and vital supplies.
In Yemen, on Sunday, the International Red Cross Committee reported the completion of the exchange of prisoners by the governments of Yemen and Saudi Arabia with Houthi forces. Almost 900 people were released by the Houthis and the governments of Yemen and Saudi Arabia. The mediator of this process was the International Red Cross Committee. The entity not only acted as an intermediary, but also took part in the exchanges through its airplanes. The agreement between the governments and the Houthi authorities was signed with the support of the United Nations. The exchanges were originally scheduled to begin on April 11th, but began on April 14th and concluded on April 16th. The Houthi forces plan to carry out another exchange of 1,400 prisoners with the Yemeni government in the coming days. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.